just whereabouts are you today? Because we always have a bit of a nose as to where people are.
Yeah, I've listened to a couple of your episodes today, and you've got a good mix of podcast guests. In terms of myself, I am in Manchester at the moment. I had a bit of an issue with my laptop charger earlier
Oh
today,
no.
so I'm currently in a small little office that's owned by my friend. Just so I can give you the best audio experience possible.
So you're
Cool.
coming down
Yeah.
from a panic of whether or not your charger was going to work.
Yeah.
So you're that's quite unique. You're in the office, which is something that we haven't said for a long time on this podcast, which is great. And I hope we didn't take you too far out of your way to.
No. For reference, I'm the only person in this office. It's actually a dance studio, but there's an office in the studio.
Cool.
So I won't break out into any moves, but yeah.
Go on.
We'd like to witness that if you fancy it, George. I'm sure you've got a few good ones. And I'm sure I get regularly subjected to the latest TikTok moves by my lovely 9-year-old daughter, which is actually quite fantastic. I mean, loads of people slag off TikTok, but the one thing I would say about TikTok, what they've done for children in the sense of having fun and creating. My daughter's an absolutely fantastic dancer. I mean, I try and imitate some of the moves, and I just can't. It's laughable. And obviously, TikTok as a forum during lockdown, we've all seen it, all the posts, all the going back to the mums, the Esmores, trying to recreate those moves. Does create quite a lot of amusement.
I was going to say, are we going to see some special content on the Notwicks LinkedIn page of the Lowe family TikTok dance recreation?
Moving swiftly on. So look, George, we've known each other probably going back to definitely Bloomberg times. It sounds almost like some kind of dinosauric period in my life, but it was only sort of four or so years ago. And you were a keen attendee at a number of events, and I always remember, I think we came back to maybe was it Manchester or Liverpool, and you came along to some of the events in the northeast that we did. And look, I think I know you pretty well, and Anthony does through the work we do with Notwicks on the advisory side. Just the audience, if they were to sort of, want to reach out to you, like what you're saying about your business that you work for, tell us more.
Yeah, so in terms of the fund that I work for, Acf Investors, we're an early stage venture fund, and our model is predicated on co-investment alongside syndicates of angel investors. Specifically, what we look for in a really good syndicate is sector smart angel investors, so people that have deep domain expertise in a particular sector, and in that way they can add value to the founding team. And we've invested in 100 companies. We just completed on our 100th portfolio company this week, and we're typically coming in at the late seed stage. But what I really like about the fund is it's a very diverse and eclectic group of companies, and we are sector agnostic investors, so we can look at a multitude of different business models.
Okay, and then when I suppose a couple of points to drill into there, George. When you're investing in some of these companies, is it like, what's the sort of range of amount? Is it a kind of like, here's the money, see you in 2 years, or is it, here's the money, we want to, be kept in touch, we want to go on your board? Just sort of level of interaction and size of amount would be good.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we're early stage, so we're typically coming in at the late seed rounds. So that's companies that have established some form of commercial traction and validation. And the round sizes we usually participate in range from $500,000 to $5 million. I would say our true sweet spot is 750K to 2 million. And we tend to be 20 to 30% of those rounds. So we can invest anywhere from 100K to 1 million, but I'd probably say our average is 350 to 400. And in terms of engagement, what works really well with our model is because we have this co-investment piece of partnering with domain experts, sector smart angels, what we find is that they will play that more active role of being hands-on and supporting the founding team and help to plug some gaps and lean on their prior experience perhaps as an operator. And for ourselves, we try and support in other ways, so introductions to people in our network, our deal experience, so giving our view on future funding rounds. But we're a team of generalists, we're not operators, we're there to support, and therefore we don't take board seats, but we often have a board observer position, which is often the lead angel anyway.
Okay, got you. And I suppose the fact that you're working with these angels so closely is it a bit like, so I'm showing my age here, is it a bit like Top of the Pops, where you have like this week's top 50 are, you know, or is it kind of like something that you know, over, you know, I suppose you have by different verticals, the different angels. I'm just, how does that all work?
Yeah, so typically angels will proposition to us and they will reach out to us and say, I've worked in this sector, I've exited this company, for example, I now want to invest back into the sector. This is a company I like the look of. Would you consider taking a look and speaking with the team and potentially co-investing? So there are syndicates that we've worked with historically, but we aren't fixed on working with particular syndicates. And we're not fixed on working with formal syndicates. It can merely be 3 independent angel investors who have taken a fairly rigorous approach to their DD and want someone to come in alongside, a kind of institutional weight of capital to come in alongside them. So there's different ways in terms of how our process emerges, but at the core of what we do is there needs to be a lead angel within our process. So that is someone who is taking a rigorous approach to the due diligence, and someone who is comfortable articulating their rationale for investing to our investment committee as well.
Would you say, well, if we look at this year and as we come out of COVID, hopefully in the UK, busier than ever? Is it kind of, I hate to say it, I mean, I can say it because I have my own business, because I kind of like groan at my inbox sometime. I'm like, oh, God, you know, give me a break. You kind of been overwhelmed with deal flow, and you know, we've had several guests on recently who said that, you know, the quality of businesses coming through now, you know, is superb compared to previous years. Just what's your thoughts on the, I suppose the quality and the quantity?
Yeah, so sort of looking at it, the period holistically, the pandemic period going back to, say, March 2020, I think it's been a period of deep reflection for everyone, whether you're working in early stage investment or you're a tech founder or you work in the corporate world or whatever it might be. And I think what that's led to is more people deciding that they want to go down the founder route. But we've also seen an acceleration in digitalization of certain industries that were quite stubborn and resistant to digital adoption and digitalization. And so that has accelerated certain aspects of particular verticals like telemedicine, for example. And I think you're seeing really interesting innovation and evolution in business models there. And that has improved the quality, because there's more entrants coming into those markets. In terms of quantity, I think there's peaks and troughs for me. So I remember October, November being a really busy period for me in terms of deal flow. And I think what's really interesting as well is we've just launched a new fund at the start of this year, so start of 2021. So you would have seen that we rebranded to ACF Investors. Yeah. For a long time, we were known as AngelCoFund. And on the back of the success of the co-fund, we launched a second fund called the Delta Fund, which is a £30 million fund aimed at, it's still a co-investment model, but it's aimed at being a streamlined, fast-track version of the AngelCoFund. And we are deploying that into more commercially validated businesses. And I'm really excited about that because it's an opportunity to accelerate and build upon the success of the co-fund.
Yeah. That's great, George. And just going back to the point you were making about some digitally reluctant verticals or sectors. You mentioned obviously telemedicine is one that I think most people recognise that the pandemic accelerated that. Any others that stand out in your mind that have seen a kind of real volte-face or a mixed shift of, okay, and you're all looking to back some of the, I suppose, the aspiring founders in those sectors. Any particular segments that you'd like to talk about there in other sectors?
So I think we are a generalist investor, so we can invest across the board. But I think there's two areas that I'm really curious about at the moment. And in different ways, the pandemic has accelerated those particular markets. I think one within fintech, there is the capital market. So you work for Bloomberg, right? And I think we met when I was a sell side analyst, and so part of that is part of that lives with me today, and so I'm really interested in how the capital markets evolves and how innovation disrupts the capital markets. And so what we've seen over the last year is different ways in which stakeholders and participants engage with the capital markets. So the SPAC craze, and then the Robin Hood saga. And I'm having more conversations with people who never showed any interest in investing in equities than I'd ever done in the time when I was working in the public markets. So I think that's a really fascinating area. And in more recent times, I'm having some really, really interesting discussions with founders who are looking to disrupt the capital markets. And then another particular area that I'm interested in, again, has been accelerated in many ways by the pandemic, is the creator economy. So gaming is quite interesting. I think that's quite an interesting landscape, but just generally, the creator economy, I think we're seeing different tools, software tools, and different platforms being created. And I'm really interested to learn more about that evolution and speak to founders in that market as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, on picking up on that, I was quite intrigued this week to see some of the commentary around the rebirth of the high street, which obviously lots been talked about, written about. It does seem to be happening with I'm of an older vintage, so I've seen all the. I remember going to Debenhams in Birmingham as a treat, or British Home Stores when I was a wee lad, and we used to go in on the train from
CHS.
No, that's it. Yeah. And like now, it's the rise of the independents, and I think that I'm not really from. Well, I'd be interested to hear whether ACF are looking at sort of the D2C, the whole what's happening with the future of the. I suppose you've got the future of everything, haven't you? But really, the future of the high street is or work is really something that I believe will really form in the next 18 months to 2 years. Any opinions there would be great.
Yeah, so there's actually two really interesting case studies in our portfolio. The first one being Gousto, which is kind of, in many ways, the flagship investee company for us. We invested at the really early stages. there, and followed on many times, and they became the first portfolio, the first unicorn in our portfolio, which we're really proud of last year. And they've just gone from strength to strength, led by a really incredible team there. And they're a great example of D2C companies accelerating through the pandemic and the shift to direct to consumer consumption of food and meal recipe kits. And I think that market is only going to evolve. And I'm having some really interesting conversations with operators of dark kitchens and repurposing spaces that have been vacant. So hotel kitchens have been vacant for much of the last year, and I've had some really fascinating chats with founders there. So I think that there's going to be really incredible innovation in D2C food as we progress out of the pandemic.
Yeah, I did have a funny moment a couple of weeks ago with one of my children who was like, we were looking on Deliveroo and there were all these like, Tizzy's beef burgers and, various random brands. And, I was just asked like, where's that shop? And I was like, they're in the shop. It's not like Leon or
in the shipping container.
The shop is in a car park down the road, But I think the whole dark kitchen. We worked a while back with I think it's Ghost Kitchen.
Ghost Kitchens.
Yeah, they're doing. I imagine they're going super well because it was a good sort of 6 to 12 months before. Obviously the sad news of the pandemic hitting, but so I think it's really exciting time. I mean, just as a sort of anecdotal, George with his ACF hat off, I really like all the autonomous stuff that's going on. Is there a sort of a tech that you think, and there's been a re-emergence of stories recently on the rise of the Terminators again. I think people are struggling for sort of COVID related tech headlines, and they're going back to sort of the pre-COVID, headline grabbers. Anything that really kind of, as you look out or gets you really excited about the world of tech outside of, I suppose, the ACF kind of remit?
Yeah, I think, and I'm not by any means the best practitioner of green technologies, but I think that is just it's going to define this generation. It's going to define our lifetimes, what we do in terms of climate change. So I think I'm very much an observational person, and one thing that I've observed over the past year is just how much plastic doesn't get recycled. And so I think repurposing the way in which we create materials, how we reuse materials, and how we use natural products in our life is really fascinating. And obviously that feeds into the autonomous aspect, so electrical vehicles, mobility as a whole. And I think there's so many different layers and facets to the shift towards more sustainable practices and living that will really shape the world, not just for ourselves, but for future generations as well. I think that's a really important discussion to have.
There is a counter debate on electric cars at the moment about, the battery is actually worse for the environment. And I'm like, God, can we never get this right? I mean, and then people are obviously then saying, well, naturally, hydrogen should be the next big thing if electric is not as good as we thought, but obviously it's currently difficult to distribute hydrogen as effectively as electric. So I could go off on one, and I am going off on one. I'm drawing it back in. So George, in an average week, I know this is a bit of a sort of stato type question, but we're always intrigued to sort of how many, if I was a founder, I'd find your details, or I've watched the Vodcast, really like George, I want to send him my deck. How, you can reach out, I suppose, via the website or LinkedIn. How many decks do you get a week? And of that deck inflow, that whole funnel, you then kind of whittle it down to, we actually meet with 200 companies a year or founders a year? Just what's the sort of big and the funnel look like?
And do you think that'll change with the new fund, and then can go on to the structure of how that's changed as well? Because I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, so just to kind of cover that off, or what I would say is that because we've rebranded, we built a new website, so we've got a fresh new website, and for any founders listening, there is a really good video on our new website. It's about 2 minutes long, but it's a really concise, clear video in terms of how our process works, going from sort of pitching the idea to us to actually going to investment committee and completing the investment. It's in the segment of AngelCoFund and then how it works. It's a really good video.
Just on that, roughly the timeline is roughly takes 2 months, 4 months, 1 month. Yeah.
We usually say we guide towards sort of a 3-month process. It can often be very shorter than that, but I guess it really depends on the different components. And I think what founders need to remember is we're a co-investor, so we typically don't lead rounds. So there needs to be certain components in place in order for us to move along with the process.
Yeah. And then I distracted you a bit there, George. So that funnel is, would you say, like finger in the wind, 1,000 companies a year, 10,000, 20,000?
I would probably say in the late hundreds, going towards the 1,000 mark in terms of companies that we will see their deck or see their pitch in a year. In terms of companies that we actually invest in, I would probably say 6 to 8 new companies, as well as follow-on investments into our portfolio companies, existing portfolio companies as well.
So the middle bit there. So the top, you look at the decks, then you go and meet with what, 100, maybe 80 a year. What's that number look like?
In terms of companies that I would say I actually really engage with post a pitch, I'd probably say it's 2 to 4 a week. And so if you calculate that for 100 to 200.
Yeah. And then with that's a pretty reflective number, I think, relative to the other VCs we talked to, Anthony, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I suppose really when you're at that meeting stage, George, what are you really looking for that founder to sort of give you greater confidence around?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of 3 things that I like in a founder, particularly. I mean, there's many things, but 3 things I would focus on. One is just ambition and hunger. They really want to build something significant. They really have that drive, that relentless drive in them to do something special.
Passion.
To counterbalance that, they also need a humility to know that they can't do it themselves. And so having the self-awareness to know, this is what I'm good at, this is where I need support on, so where are the gaps in the team, and understanding that getting the right investors on board can help you find the right support for your idea or your business. And then thirdly, I think is understanding how to build the business. So there's 2 aspects to the building. It's building a product and service that the market want, understanding that. And then 2, building an environment and a team that the best talent want to be a part of. So understanding those 2 different aspects of building.
Yeah, okay. And I suppose I'm going back a step to is the quality of businesses that you're seeing in 2021 that you get those meetings, do you think they're better than what you've seen before? Or well, not really better than, because you're obviously invested, but is the breadth higher? There are a higher amount of companies that have those characteristics that you've just explained?
I think so. So if I look at the company, as I mentioned earlier, we just completed our 100th portfolio company investment.
The breadth of founders that are coming through, you do think there's a step change going on. And you're UK focused, aren't you, George? I think.
Yes, very, very much so. We are UK focused. We only invest in UK companies. We can co-invest with angels based anywhere. That is part of our model. But we're very much focused on the UK. And I think what's really interesting is that what the pandemic has really highlighted is that there are opportunities outside of London, and we're seeing more founders outside of London take the leap into entrepreneurship and try and build scalable businesses.
Okay, and I suppose that's we've touched on this regional area with our chats with Stephen Kelly of Tech Nation, and is there a particular growth in your investments in the north or all over the UK? Is there any trend lines or trends you'd pick out there, George?
I still think that the vast majority of our portfolio is centered on London, Oxford, and Cambridge, but we are seeing more investor-ready businesses in the regions. And so one of the interesting portfolio companies we have is a company called Neurovalence, and they're actually based in Northern Ireland. And what they do is they build headsets, non-invasive medical devices that stimulate the nervous system to help with chronic health problems. So initially they were focused on weight loss, but what people actually found is it helped them with insomnia. And so they're also looking at not only insomnia and weight loss, but anxiety and diabetes as well. So that is a really interesting market as well. We've got 2 or 3 companies in Northern Ireland that are doing really interesting things.
Right, great. What would remind me the name there, George? Neurovalence. So neuro is in neuroscience, and then valence, VALENS. That sounds fascinating. Do you think are these mainly coming out of the universities over there, or?
Yeah, so I think Queen's University in Belfast is a hub of innovation. And what we've seen there is some really interesting founders and operators and scientists come out of that university and build some really interesting technologies.
Great. And then continuing the regional deep dive.
Yeah.
Your beloved home city. There's we've worked with the GP Bullhound guys in the past, Hugh and Ed, who are based in the northwest. Much going on. I mean, everything is always tempered by the fact that we've been locked in our rooms for the last 12 months. But what you've sort of stuck your nose above the parapet, and much happening in Manchester.
Yeah, so that beyond fan protests, there's actually a lot going on here. So the company that we just completed on early this week, they are actually based in Manchester. And what's really great about that deal is our co-investors are true sector smart angels, in the sense that they're experienced angel investors, but they're also really experienced entrepreneurs and operators. They've scaled and exited 3 businesses in that sort of creative sector, and we're really excited to work with them. But generally, there's a lot of vibrancy in Manchester, not just in terms of tech, but also in terms of the economy as a whole. If you go through the city centre, there's trains left, right, and centre, building really interesting communities, and I'm really excited about engaging more with the ecosystem here and helping it grow as well.
Yeah, because I think I spoke a few times. Was it UK Fast is in Manchester? Am I getting that
Very
right?
much so, yeah.
Yeah, and
yes, they are. Yeah,
and obviously the whole you know, it was the centre of the rag trade, so you've always been good at e-commerce with Boohoo, and I mean, it's great to hear that it's booming. I mean, on the note of, you know, getting out and about again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on events. You're going to be popping up at things in UK Fast in September, or are you going to stick to sort of more the live streaming and all the hop-ins, or would it be a mix of the both?
I like the spontaneity of in-person events. I also like as I mentioned before, I'm very much observational, so I like to observe social cues and the interactions between people in the physical. But I think going forward, it'll be, in terms of events, it'll be a hybrid of the virtual and the physical. And I think the best of both worlds is the way forward.
So you think, you know, the better places will probably have more, I suppose, better events will have more key people in the room, adding to the debate, so to speak, and then not that the worst people aren't invited. I don't want that to sound incorrect or politically PC, but do you think it's going to be more finite, you know, main speakers and a few people in the audience, and then wider broadcast community? Because, you know, I suppose some people are going to be a bit, I don't really want to go and schleck all the way, and I can get just as much now from virtual. You know,
I think there's going to be a bit of a variety of kinds of events. There'll be some that are exclusive like that for the people in the room, but I think as well, as another guest of ours pointed out, in this concept of accessibility in VC, I think having access to both, especially, you know, if it's a London event and you're not even based in London, right? You still want to have access to it. So I think that's also probably going to be one of those trends that is really like a big motivator for these hybrid events as well.
Yes. So I think part of the reflection that I touched upon earlier as part of the pandemic is justifying how you spend your time. And so people previously would fly in to London for a conference and an event. But now that will be, there'll be a different consideration. It will be, actually, I can get just as much value potentially, or perhaps a little bit less value, but the cost won't be as high, engaging through hop-in or through Zoom.
And also to your points on the climate change response as well in ESG, it has also a different cost associated with it besides monetary or time.
Exactly, that's a really good point as well, Anthony.
Yeah, it's funny. It's in everyone's life. It's changing, isn't it? I think, you know, I mean, I suppose Anthony and I can confess that, you know, we like the way we work. We're freelancers. We set up the business. Well, I set it up 4 years ago. Anthony joined a couple of years ago, and, you know, probably in a given year, even before the pandemic, we probably saw each other face to face, maybe once a month, you know, at one of the events. Now that's extended, and I
haven't seen Chris in person since like last March.
Lucky you.
Is that a good or bad thing?
That's my wife shouting. Lucky you.
Oh no, my internet.
But you know, but it's the norm. It feels like the norm now. And I mean, I know, you know, and I think, you know, I used to have probably most business weeks I'd have to pop into central London 1 day a week to press the flesh a bit. You know, founders that thought I had like 4 legs and 8 arms and just wanted to sort of meet me face to face to sort of, you know, I suppose, do that. And then, you know, interestingly, you know, I always tended to sort of ask founders to come down to Richmond, which a few people I hastened to thought was in North Yorkshire, which, you know, no, Richmond, you know, it's in London. It's not that far away. You know, so, yeah, I think there is a Richmond in North Yorkshire, by the way. But, you know, I think, look, you know, that once a week is probably going to be once a month for me, and everything else can be done, as you say, us helping, you know, the carbon footprint You know, I mean, oddly, I mean, I know not to labour the point, but I've not been on a train. I know this sounds really bizarre. I haven't been on a train for even beyond the amount of time that Anthony last saw me. I mean, it baffles me. I mean, and also, you know, that's another interesting point about new economies and infrastructures. Well, are there going to be as many trains? Are trains going to exist in the future? What's going to happen?
We were kind of undersupplied on transportation anyway, especially if you look at some of the routes like Transpennine, right? Nightmare. So if anything, it's kind of a good thing, right?
Yeah, kind of equalizing it out. So, yeah, no, so George, you know, we've obviously looked at the UK quite a bit and with your role naturally being UK focused, outside into the wider world of tech, first sort of area I'd love to hear your thoughts on is Clubhouse. Are you one of the esteemed members of this madness called Clubhouse, or have you avoided that one?
So I did join Clubhouse. I think it kind of felt like a moment in time where it was sort of gaining momentum. And I think I read this week that they're looking to roll out to Android users. And my thoughts on Clubhouse were it was a moment in time, but I do have some doubts about the sustainability of it beyond the pandemic. I just feel that there's certain things that need to be in place in order for someone to really actively and regularly engage with Clubhouse. And I think in a post-pandemic world, those factors won't be in place.
Yeah. That's polite.
Better things to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, you know, the opportunity cost is what you're alluding to. And, you know, do I want to sit and listen to different voices, or would I like to do something more engaging and be outside? And, you know, it's not to be disparaging about the business model. I think what they've built so far is really interesting, and it was a great way to increase accessibility with people that you would ordinarily not dream of engaging with. You know, Elon Musk type individuals, you can actually have a conversation with them. But how sustainable is that is a question.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then another one that is kind of, it's gone beyond the hype factor, is the whole NFT saga.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's actually a really interesting innovation, and I'm actually more bullish on NFTs than I would be on Clubhouse. And the reason for that is because if you look at the younger generation, they're used to transacting value virtually, whether that's through PlayStation or Xbox or other forms of content creation. And I just feel that it will actually allow more content creators to realize more value in terms of what they create. So if we take a physical piece of art, beyond the initial sale of the art by the artist, how much value do they realize as it's resold? It's very little. The value is usually realized by high net worth brokers and intermediaries.
And even if they were to realize some value, what would the cost be like to realize that value? Because that's the other side of it.
Yeah. So I think the opportunity to use technology to more equitably distribute value to content creators is a theme generally that I like. Whether it's through something like Patreon or even YouTube now, you can tip content creators. That wasn't a thing 2 or 3 years ago, but I actually think that's a really interesting innovation. I think it presents challenges for advertisers, but I think it's a really interesting evolution of platforms.
Well, it's really interesting that creativity, excellence, innovation in entertainment for so many years. I mean, I hate to say it, you know, you've seen people abusing that system. I hate to say it. I mean, I was listening to a really excellent podcast this morning from my not to name drop, but my neighbour up 5 doors up the road, who is at the Guardian, and she done the exclusive on Noel Clarke, which, you know, I love Noel Clarke, but he's obviously been abusing his position in power as being that middle person. And I think one of the great things about all the movements and technologies and how it's almost breaking that middle, the agency, the kind of the person that the widget that has the power is now through things like
the gatekeepers,
accessibility.
And I applaud that. I think we need more of that, and there's just going to be, you know, I think what was it? I was watching a fascinating thing about TLC, you know, the girl group in the 80s,
in the 90s,
and that classic quote that, you know, we're young, we're beautiful, we're famous, and we're broke. I think is super powerful. That you know, the music industry, the film industry, technology, and the different channels, be it, you know, okay, some of them are controlled by, you know, sort of massive mammoth tech companies, but it is enabling the independents to get the just rewards. And I think that's really important. That's one of the things that I'm a big advocate of, and any technology that does that, when we see businesses that are enabling that, you know, coming through the Notwicks funnel, I'm a big sort of like, oh wow, I have to help this business because it's right to do that. And I think, you know, more of it, please, viewers and listeners, would be my advice there. So, I suppose we've gone a bit like whoosh, and now I'm reading it back in, and, you know, it's been a good week for our friends at the London Stock Exchange. I think, because obviously this is pre-recorded for the people, you know, who are listening. We generally take 6 to 8 weeks to get things out there, because we like to do things in advance, I think, is the perfect way of phrasing what we do, Anthony. And I mean, this is the week of Darktrace and our lovely cybersecurity success story in Cambridge. And last time I looked, it was up 40-odd%, I think, on its IPO. So
on the first day,
Sorry, Anthony, you go.
On the first day, it went up 40%. And it was interesting because they repriced it down following the Deliveroo kerfuffle. So kind of interesting. Seems like they had it right in the first place.
Typical investment banker's trick. Say no more, because I don't want to be sued by any of my old employers. What's your thoughts on the, you know, because obviously you're as you mentioned, you're ex-Southside analyst. You know, are we we're going to surf the wave for the rest of the year, do you think, IPO-wise and tech-wise?
So I think, again, it's a really interesting space. It was good to see the Darktrace IPO successfully complete, especially it is a female-founded and led business. I think that's a really positive signal that of what can be achieved. The Deliveroo incident was not quite as positive, and I think generally it's about sentiment, investor sentiment, and I saw today actually that the FTSE 100 is nearing pandemic highs, and there's actually in terms of high growth tech businesses, particularly in the US, there is investors are rotating out of high growth tech, but what we do need as the UK, we do need a thriving capital markets, equity capital markets, and I think we want less companies to be floating in the US, because we want to make sure that the economy is buoyant and stimulated. And I think, you know, if you take Arrival, who this week announced a partnership with Uber, they're a UK-based business, but they listed in the US through a SPAC vehicle.
Wow!
What's the name of that, George?
Arrival. So they make electrical vehicles, well, electric buses. And they listed in the US, but they're based in the UK.
Wow, something that might help that and create a bit of a headwind. Apparently, they're looking at tighter regulations on SPACs in the US. try and limit a bit of that craze and hype, especially because the returns have been abysmal for most of the SPACs that you've seen. Yeah.
So what sort of 80-90% of SPACs duff returns, is it? Or what?
I think if you look at them, it's kind of interesting. Some of them, obviously, there's this timeline where they need to do the reverse merger, otherwise they have to give the money back. So then if they're reaching that deadline, it calls into question the quality of the company that is being reverse mergered. The other aspect of it is it gets hyped up during the reverse merger, and then it's just fallen 50, 70%. Obviously, this is all short term, but this is one of the reactions to it, I think. Plus, the GameStop Reddit reaction is to try and protect retail a little bit more.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, going on the point you were making, George, on the built in Britain, list in Britain, stay in Britain. We've always been, I hate to say the football analogy, we've been a selling football club, and it's
we've been the Spurs. Spurs of the previous decade. They don't sell so easily now. But
Southampton, I think, is perhaps a
better analogy, definitely.
But yeah, it's hopefully. I mean, I feel encouraged that you look at the slate of businesses that have been built that we all know in the last 10 years have dominated the private tech scene. They're coming. We've had some fascinating chats with different people who are like, it's almost like we're going to be seeing it happening a bit in waves, so it's kind of like the bigger unicorn type ones, real headline makers for the next 3 to 6 months, then a sort of next wave of perhaps the sort of AI SaaS type businesses. And I wouldn't you can never be linear about these things, but I think there's a lot of stock in the cupboard in the UK that will keep that momentum growing. And I think I've alluded to it today I tweeted about, we had George O'Connor from Stifle Nicholas on, and he's a big advocate of the fact that the UK has always been a great environment for businesses that, they're not unicorns, but there's a healthy group of investors like the Herald Investment and Guy Feld at Hargreaves Lansdowne, I think, who are always going to be there to support very small companies who are, not the headline grabbers, but they are.
I think what he said,
bigger companies.
I think what he said almost verbatim was the UK does small tech really well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comment. And going back to my sell side days, the small mid cap space for tech opportunities was great. What I would also say is that there's been a great case study over the last 12 months with Tesla. If you look at who their biggest institutional backer was in the dark days, it was a Scottish asset manager, Baillie Gifford. So there is appetite there to back these high growth tech businesses. But ultimately, I think if you break it down and look at it holistically, the UK in terms of culture is more conservative than the US. So the tolerance for high growth, loss making businesses, it's never going to be the same as the US, and the US has a more sophisticated capital markets. But there isn't to say that, particularly post Brexit, we can't create an environment that is more conducive to companies realizing some value in the public markets.
Well, we need to, we have the ability to build very strong, large cap tech companies, and we need to keep them in the UK. It's as simple as that. That mentality, I think it was Oliver Finch at Maersk alluded to it. He's based in Copenhagen, but he's told me many times that the UK founders of old, what are termed, they're looking for the sports car and the vicarage, and
sports car in the driveway and vicarage in the Cotswolds.
and it's now, whereas obviously the US somewhat more, they want to be billionaires rather than millionaires, and
they want to start a space rocket company.
Yeah, exactly. It's somewhat different, and it's going to take a few more years to get there. But I think, as much as we advocate and beat the drum, and you carry on doing great things that you're doing at ACF, George, and investing in the Goustos and the next big things, then we're in a good place. So off soapbox, more back to George. It is nearly the weekend. A Manchester United fan, I believe.
Yes, I am. I am.
And nice. Well, you lost last night, but you're in the final, which is a great thing. And British football, yes. Chelsea, yes. Man City, no comment. Relaxation, George. Are you kind of tech obsessed? You're kind of always on tech, or you're kind of reading, writing, or what do you do in the downtime apart from watch Ole and the boys? Are you a streaming fan? Any movies? Anything to watch?
I would actually like some recommendations for you. I don't think I pencil in enough time for Netflix and things like that. But I
look left to Anthony, because he's the guy that has the recommendation. Well, tell us what your genre is and what you like, and he'll come up with something.
So there's two things that I'm trying to watch at the moment, which is Money Heist, which isn't a new series, but it's a really interesting one. And also Snowfall, which is, I think, an interesting series as well.
Snowfall.
So it's actually, I think the latest season is going to be on the BBC this Sunday. So it kind of parallels with The Wire. So it's to do with a distribution of illegal substances, let's say. I think the character development is really interesting.
Yeah, and it's called Snowfall, and it's on BBC. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Oh, wow, cool. And is it UK based, or is it in the States?
No. So what's really interesting, again, with the parallels with The Wire, is that it is a US product, but it's the main character is a Brit. So he's born and raised in Peckham, but he's learnt the American accent really well, and he's the breakout star of that show.
Oh, cool.
What's the actor's name? Do you know?
Damson Idris is his name.
Okay, cool. And that's so. There's already been season 1 or season 2, and
yeah. So me being my typical self, I'm still on season 1, but season 4, I believe, is being rolled out on BBC on Sunday.
It takes me about 100 years to get through seasons, because I literally this is what you two have got to look forward to of old age. Just sort of sit down, got rid of the kids at 9 o'clock, and might have to do a bit more work. 10 o'clock, I'll have a bit of me time now. And like 10 o'clock, season, whatever goes on, 10:22, so that is old age. You cannot get to the end of a season of a program on Netflix within a month. I would say, what would take you a week, it takes me a month. So to look forward to, chaps.
Yeah, I also really like documentaries, and I thought, last year, we had The Last Dance was,
that really was phenomenal. Really enjoyed that.
And the thing about documentaries is I don't actually have to be interested in the underlying focus of the content. It's about how it's put together, how the story is told is what I really like.
If you liked The Last Dance, I don't know if you watched it, but the Formula One Drive to Survive.
I haven't seen that, but I'll definitely check that out.
I'm not a huge fan of Formula One, and like watching the races live, I think is a bit difficult to follow if you're not like super into it. But the way that they tell the story of these Formula One seasons, and they're interviewing the drivers, they're interviewing the managers of the teams, and all the drama that happens off the track in switching drivers, switching suppliers for engines, all this kind of stuff. And the format that they tell that story in, it was so compelling to watch. So if you liked The Last Dance, I would definitely recommend watching Formula One Drive to Survive as well.
And I'll check that out.
Yeah, it's good. I can't let this one go without, speaking to a Mancunian, the music scene, my love of music. I'm still, I kind of get my fix through Twitch and the different DJs and is it Glitterbox and Beatports. Are you into that type of musical genre, George, or are you kind of more into the bands? Because obviously there's been some great groups coming out of Manchester over the years. Just anything on that light that you want to shed?
Yeah, I have quite a broad taste in music. I think I often will listen to music in foreign languages, so I don't necessarily understand the lyrics, but it's the vibe that is created through the music and the energy that it creates. And a UK artist I really like, again, South London origins, is a guy called Tom Misch. He makes some really interesting music. Tom Misch, M-I-S-C-H. He's a really soulful, not only singer, but he's a great guitar player as well. So yeah, he's someone I listen to a lot of today, and a US artist called Anderson .Paak. I'm a really big fan of him as well. He's doing something with Bruno Mars at the moment.
Ooh.
Really interesting.
Wow,
mixing good companies. All right, yeah. Well, look, George, I won't take up any more of your time because you've been a splendid guest, and I've loved catching up, and I love all the work you do. Keep it going. It's brilliant, and well done on Gousto, and I'm sure there's more to come in the next few years on the portfolio. And yeah, I'll say my goodbyes. And